Is the Superdome in New Orleans haunted? After 4 years of building, the Louisiana Superdome opened on August 3, 1975, the largest fixed dome structure in the world. It took 4 times as long to build as planned, so it missed its own first Super Bowl in 1975, which was played at Tulane Stadium instead. The Saints have disappointingly failed to secure many winning seasons, including famously losing the first game in the stadium. The Saints have won 1 Super Bowl in 58 years, so that's at least better than the dozen teams who haven't won any. But fans have shown up at the Dome with paper bags on their heads and gave the team the nickname the Aints because of the poor performance. Is the team cursed? Do previous occupants still linger on the property? Is the Superdome in New Orleans haunted? This prime piece of property in downtown New Orleans wasn't always vacant before the Church of the Saints was built. Before the Superdome, in the 1830s, a canal was built to connect Lake Pontchartrain to the American sector of New Orleans, upriver from the French Quarter. The French Quarter had its own canal, the Girod Canal, that also connected to the lake via Bayou St. John. This canal was where Lafitte Greenway is today, and it ended where Basin Street is. The canals made commerce easier, as traversing the mouth of the Mississippi from the Gulf of Mexico is still a long process, but the lake provides a shortcut. The new Basin Canal was turned into the interstate and Pontchartrain Boulevard. The legend holds that this was the prime time that the Irish immigrants were flooding into New Orleans, fleeing the Great Hunger or the Potato Famine in Ireland. Building canals was deadly work at this point in New Orleans because they hadn't quite figured out what caused yellow fever or cholera, but they knew it killed you if you did not grow up here. Yellow fever earned the nickname the Stranger's Disease because of this. During the building of the new Basin Canal, it was cheaper to use Irish immigrants who were desperate for work and would possibly die of communicable disease than it was to use their enslaved people who were also an asset. Some estimations say that as many as 20,000 Irishmen died building the new Basin Canal. But we know how many people immigrated during that time, and we know they all didn't die. My ancestors were among those immigrants, and no one in my family died building the new Basin Canal that I've discovered so far. Ghost stories may tell you that they buried the Irishmen where they fell, which would be lining the sidewalks of Pontchartrain Boulevard today. But modern scholarship has traced this story to this 1937 article in the Times-Picayune, more than a century after the events are said to have occurred, and finds no contemporary evidence for the death of excessive Irishmen. Instead, the news around the canal was the complaints of the Irish for not being paid. Both canals, the New Basin Canal uptown and the Carondelet Canal downtown, had a turning basin at the end where barges could turn around instead of having to back out of the canal. The Carondelet Canal Basin was about where the Municipal Auditorium is today. The basin for the New Basin Canal was near where Union Station is today, but it was filled in the 1930s with a long break for World War II and finished in the 1950s. All that remains of the New Basin Canal is a small portion by the lake at West End. But that isn't why the Superdome itself may be haunted. Legend holds that the Saints are cursed because the Superdome was built over the Protestant cemetery. Opened in 1822, the Girod Cemetery, or the Protestant Cemetery, was owned by Christ Church Cathedral. It is said that it was once spectacular, but by the 1940s it was in disrepair. It was condemned by the Board of Health in 1945. They planned first to rebuild the cemetery. Apparently, All Souls Day was popular with the cemetery, but Christ Church did not quite have the record-keeping abilities of the Catholic Church. They didn't know who was buried there, but figured all those who honored the dead there would know. By 1948, the plan was to move the cemetery so that they could relocate their railroad facilities under Union Station. In 1954, the Times-Picayune recounts the story of the cemetery and says that complaints started as early as the 1840s. In 1957, Life magazine did a feature on the shocking condition of the cemetery. In 1958, Christ Church Corporation sold the land to the federal government for the parking garage for the post office. This is a comparison of an 1845 map and today's map. I tried to match up the streets that are still the same. So the green at the bottom is Camp Street, the yellow is Poydras, the purple is Ferret Street, the orange at the top is Claiborne Avenue. It ends on the old map because it changed to St. James Street there. The blue is New Basin Canal and the interstate on today's map. The red square shows roughly where the Superdome is on both maps. So you can see that the cemetery wasn't quite where the Superdome is today, but nearby. The cemetery was demolished almost 2 decades before the Superdome was completed. So are the saints cursed? Is the Superdome haunted? Maybe. Maybe the curse has more to do with greed and concussions than playing football on the graves of Protestants. After all, the Saints did win 1 Super Bowl more than 12 other teams. The history of the New Basin Canal and the role that the Irish immigrants played in building it is the first story in my new series about Irish New Orleans, coming in March. I will be sharing stories of prominent Irish people and some stories of my own ancestors. I'm eager to learn more and to share so that more people know more about an often forgotten group in New Orleans history. Please like and subscribe for more tours and stories from the deep, coming soon.